We're ready. You ready, Chris?
Yeah.
All right, come on up. So for our first speaker is Chris McCall. I think everyone here knows Chris from the village.
Morning, everybody. Well, I don't want to assume everybody knows who I am. I just take a minute. My name is Chris McCall. I'm the village manager. I started here in 2004 as the assistant village manager / planning director. And the planning director aspect of my job, I think, is going to be pretty unique to my presentation this morning. I think it's going to set the context for the additional speakers that are going to follow behind me, and in particular, Kimmy and her project presentation. It's exciting to me to sort of get back to my roots with, I have a degree in urban and regional planning. So my fellow planners out there, we're not wedding planners, we're not planners, we're urban and regional city planners, right? So you can imagine a planner coming to Bald Head Island and having the experience I've had over the last 20 years working here. It's been great. Although my responsibilities have significantly changed. In 2016, I took over as the village manager. And so I don't get to do as much of that as I used to, but anyway. So we're all good here. Okay.
Just another vote.
All right. So my presentation is going to be a little bit about the past, a little bit of history, some of the present, where things are today, and then the future and over the next 40 years. And I added this 40 years of responsible growth. That's sort of an opinion of mine. Everybody has their opinions. After I'm finished with this, you guys feel free to share your opinions with me on if you think you agree or disagree. That's fine. But so let's talk about. I'm only going to go back to the 70s, 80s in the history, but I always like to show some visuals for those folks that are newer to the island that perhaps never seen some of these photos. This is back in the early 80s with the installation of the marina into Bald Head Island. See how flat it was. A lot of folks don't realize a lot of that land around along Rowboat Road and on the backside was upland created land from the development of the marina basin. So this is just some pictures as you look from the Chandler building. That's the big building down there, Bald Head Island Limited Administration Building, looking towards the ferry terminal. That's the original ferry terminal building. For those of you who might have seen the movie Weekend at Bernie's, it was filmed in the early 80s. That's sort of what it looked like. On the reverse side of the Chandler building, you see the Island Passage building here, and then the old Baldy. This is the barge landing, right? And this is Marina Wind that heads out to North Bald Head, West Bald Head Wind intersection. There's just some aerial imagery to show, back in 2004, the location of the Island Passage here, where golf cart parking was, relative to today, where it was relocated. The developer put in golf cart parking areas for the Kerry Park Company you have here. Also, to recognize the building, the installation of the timber bridge. Coincidentally, that was dedicated with the ribbon cutting on April 5th of 2012 with Chad Paul and Mayor Andy Sayer at the time. So when we look at the development of Bald Head Island, we go back to the 70s and 80s. For those that are aware of the reference to the stage one, this is the western half of Bald Head Island. It's referred to as stage one, with the development subdivision of a lot of that land there, which is referenced in these plats, these surveys that were recorded at the Brunswick County Register of Deeds in June of 1972. So you can see here's Cape Fear Trail, Sandpiper, and this Kingfisher Trail, which of course, Kingfisher Trail doesn't exist today because of the erosion that would come in subsequently taken that out. Stage one, I would say, was pretty well defined by those subdivisions, date through the 70s and 80s. A lot of these properties, some of these are where the original Generator Society folks had resided with those initial homes. And sort of that defining line, if you will, of Muscadine being the defining line of stage one area. As we moved into the 1990s and 2000s, we had the development of stage two and the Cape Fear Station area. As you can see in this area here, again, here's that Muscadine wine. I'll say some parts of these pods here with brown pelican, patina, peppervine were inclusive of stage one. And I would say based on the plats that were reported. But as an example, here's Cedar Grove Port that was reported in May of 1999, which is in this area here. So when we talk about stage two, being sort of the eastern end of the island, eastern half of the island, it wasn't as defined. This here shows a conceptual design in 1989. So what I pointed out for reference is sort of this curvilinear roadway leading down to, at the time, what the developer had contemplated for development of that eastern end of the island. As we know, things didn't turn out that way. The Cape Fear Station Plan Unit development, within this area, this boundary here, with the exception of the conservancy, is technically not part of the PUD. That was approved by the Village Council in February of 1999. And as a mixed-use development, had open space, park amenities, with some cluster developments, including Keeper's Landing, Surfing's Walk, Sumner's Crescent. This is where I'm going to get into the planning part, where we talk about as planners, you know, with developments, is looking at the density of the development. Density being the dwelling units per acre. And so with the Cape Fear Station PUD, we have a PUD ordinance that regulates what the maximum allowable density could be within that area of 4.27 dwelling units per acre with a single family residential, multifamily residential. When this development was approved by the council in 99, at the time, the density was at 2.47 dwelling units per acre. So when you look at the underlying zoning district of the Cape Fear Station PUD, being this PD2 here, with a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet, had the developer made the decision, they could have subdivided on average 7,000 square foot lots throughout that area. When you think about, when you look at the density of that and within that acreage, they could have put in 980 single family residential units versus the 391 that they got approved. So in other words, they could have really maximized more so the potential for development. But this is where the responsible part comes in my opinion, how they develop that area. And then as we move out to Middle Island, in the 1980s and 2000s, starting at the entrance here, extending out. For those of you who may recall, Charlie Young was one of the Generator Society members. He purchased that land and he subdivided that land into about 113 lots. He made a point when he developed that area that none of the lots would be less than 20,000 square feet. So when you look at the density, that's about 2.2 dwelling units per acre. The question here, what if Charlie had subdivided the land with lot sizes of 7,000 square feet on that same acreage? he could have maximized and gotten about 496 lots out there. This is sort of, I just want to show you this. This is the Maritime Lane Market Alley Never Teach area as it exists today. But you can see this survey that was reported in July 1990 sort of had a different vision at the time. When this survey was reported, however, it only subdivided out these parcels here. This one being the old fire station. This here being the Duke Energy, and then this here being the cell tower site. So what I also came across was this old conceptual master plan from 1995 of the stage 2 area again. And just want to point out, you know, a lot of cluster development, high dense areas in here. These are areas for single family residential, multifamily residential. So this was sort of a what if scenario that never really came to fruition. In addition to, for those that may recall, there used to be this 50-foot easement that went right straight through the maritime forest. And what these circles represent are well fields that for potable well supply. And I guess it was probably 8, 9, 10 years ago, the developer limited, the village and the state of North Carolina came together and moved that easement so that they wouldn't have to cut into the maritime forest. That potable well easement now falls along the perimeter of contractor services, property around public works, and on down Muscadine. So I think it's sort of a win-win for all the entities. So would eliminate us having to go into the forest and disturb those areas. So I just want to show as an example, nothing against Ocean Isle Beach, but people love this. Obviously, it's not bald head, but here you can see, you know, average lot sizes of 5,000 square feet, 50 by 100, 8.71 dwelling units per acre. Again, compared to Middle Island with 80 acres, that's 697 lots compared to the 113 in Middle Island. So I just want to show this visual here, which is, I call it our housing stock map. I created this some 15 years ago to try to keep track of the development on the island. This shows the red dots are single family residential. The blue dots are unimproved properties yet to be built on. Some other notable properties, these in yellow are technically in the water, they're on the ocean front are non-buildable. All this in here is the maritime forest state-owned property, including these properties here and out on the point. What this, as of January 2024, total structure is 1,312. Of that, 936 are single-family residential. Looking at the unimproved property, that's 802 properties. So when we look into the future growth with those numbers, current island build-out percentage, we're at about 62%. And then potential projected island build-out, if we average annually 30 building permits over those 802 lots, come with 26 years. So the question is, do we think that the island will be built out in the year 2050? Who knows? There's variables that could affect this number here and this number here. They could decrease or increase. So it's not an exact science, but that's what we're keeping up with. So, am I good for it?
Yeah, you're good.
All right.
All right. Any questions for Chris? So, yeah, okay. Well, we'll take comments as I transition to the next speaker.
I don't understand how these things could have been approved where my understanding is we didn't have a interest structure for all this, but I mean, could we have supported with water and sewer if they had built 900 homes in it?
That's a good question. Could I will say the current wastewater treatment plant capacity definitely could not have kept up with or managed that amount of growth or numbers, it couldn't. So you'd have to build a bigger wastewater treatment plant to be able to treat that water and sewer. So you're absolutely right.
But village approved it.
No, those what if scenarios were never quote approved.
Oh, all right. thank you.
What was approved was that Cape Fear Station Planning and Development in 1999 that really laid out the framework for how that area has been developed over the last 15 or so years. That's,
Chris, has the village ever considered an incentive program to encourage lot owners, particularly perhaps of the less desirable ones, to be developed, to donate the land to the land trust, and thereby lessen the development pressures on it?
I would say historically, there's been a few efforts of the village in particular in looking to acquire a lot of those properties that were in the eroded areas along the ocean front shoreline that were quite unbuildable, that the village would take care of preparing the deed, getting that recorded to make that happen. That's about to the extent of it.
Well, to follow up on that, is there are lots that would be desirable, most desirable versus least desirable.
Yeah, I would say.
Scott, I don't know if Scott.
I'm looking at Mayor Pro Tem Gardner because there has been a little bit of discussion on that.
So, yeah, so, Rex, there is an effort to look at what to do about the undesirable lots. Building on that, there is an effort to look at, can we find ways to incent other people to donate development lots? The idea is to, can this island withstand full building? We're struggling with the ferry system right now, can't handle the sun. You just do not, you've been meeting with Chris and conservative folks and you're getting re-engaging in the conversation about what sort of plan or what sort of campaign, if you will, can we put together to try to help inform the public, help get them excited about the things that can happen to perhaps deal with this potential problem of full line building.
I'm glad we at least touched on that. More to come on that later. So, but I'm glad it came out. We can maybe get into it in the roundtable discussion. But Chris, thank you very much. Thank you.